What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're talking about gold and how to make a ton of gold early on. I'm talking getting a nice fat bank account and then being able to take that and apply it to different places of the game. Now, I'm not just talking about day one. I'm talking about day one and beyond. These are some critical foundational things that you can take and apply at any point in time throughout New World and be successful. So in most MMOs, gold is used to repair gear. You can buy various items with it, maybe pick up like a fancy rare mount. We're not going to get into mounts on New World, but in other games, buy a rare mount. In New World, gold is way more important because with gold, you can do all of those things, but you can also buy territories. And then you can set taxes and fees to make even more gold to help fund your company, help fund settlement upgrades, personal upgrades. So being able to gather a huge bankroll is incredibly important, and for some, it's very critical. So I want to go over some great ways to make gold early on, and then some decent ways to make gold in the late game, because these will have two completely different drivers, and you need to understand both of them. So in early game, players are going to have small amounts of gold. They're going to scrape this little kind of wallet together through quests, killing mobs, selling some items on the trading post. So there's not going to be too much gold that's going to be readily available. This is why you need to understand what items are going to be in high demand. That way you can get a head start on sourcing and selling those items. So there are some key questions that you can ask yourself. One, what will players be using heavily in the first few days of the game? Two, what are players focusing on in the first few days of the game? And three, what limitations will players have that can be alleviated early on, right? Be the solution to their problems. Now, like I said, these are some key questions to understand what items will sell well and what won't. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the first question. What will players be using heavily in the first few days of the game? Two things: tools and ranged weapons like the musket and the bow. So that gives us a great opportunity to capitalize on. People will want to upgrade their tools. So being the first person to put iron and higher tools out on the trading post is going to be a great opportunity. So try to be that first person to put those out there, because you'll have a full market to take advantage of. You can set your own price and people will most likely pay it. So focus on crafting iron tools to sell and then getting your engineering high enough to make steel. Now, the second thing we listed was ranged weapons. So we're looking at these because the bow and the musket both consume ammunition, right? This isn't like other games. They don't magically fire for free. You have to have ammunition. So people will be looking to purchase arrows and cartridges. Now, again, being able to source, craft, and sell these quickly will give you a market edge, and demand should be high enough since there will be a lot of new players who won't know how to craft more of them, right? Convenience, the path of least resistance, be that path for them. So let's move on to the second question. What are players focusing on in the first few days of the game? Two things: leveling and crafting. This one, super straightforward. Do not overthink it. Players are going to be trying to level as fast as possible. That way they can reach endgame. It's just natural. People don't want to spend a lot of time in early and middle game. They want to get to the tippity top, start working on stuff, and start finalizing their characters. And because almost every single power leveling guide out there says to just abuse the hell out of the town project boards and hammer things like armaments, resource turn-ins, crafting samples, these are all perfect targets for selling raw materials. Armaments need iron to complete, so be that player who sells thousands of iron ore right at the start. Resource projects are for things like fiber, linen, ingots, rawhide, coarse leather. Players will be looking to trade their gold for convenience at the trading post, so be sure to grab some farming routes. I have one for every in-demand resource ready to go for launch. So be sure to bookmark my playlist of all of my New World videos, because they will be out there. You can easily just go through, click, click, click. I have images set up for them, so you can just have the image up next to you on a different monitor and run through these things. So go through these farming routes, fill your inventory with a few different resources, and then head back to the settlement to sell them. It is absolutely insane how much people are willing to pay for materials just so they don't have to leave town. Take advantage of that. take advantage of their laziness. Now, this same principle applies for crafting. People are more than happy to go out and buy 100 iron ore from the trading post rather than go out and farm it themselves. So the last question is, what limitations will players have that can be alleviated through you? Now, this one is a bit more complex because players aren't generally going to run into the same frustrations, but there are a few points that overlap. Two things: inventory space, stats. Now, this one is way more specialized because it's something that's going to affect everyone. So at the start, you have virtually no inventory space. Every player begins with 200 inventory weight, and then over time you pick up some like low grade satchel as a quest reward. It increases your inventory weight to 250, but that's still really low, especially if you're targeting somebody who's going to be farming a lot or they like to craft a lot. Players will constantly be running out of inventory space, and that is a frustrating experience to go through. This makes for a great opportunity to sell them a solution. So right from the start, you can begin crafting new bags at the outfitting station, and these bags will increase your carry limit by 120 encumbrance. Now, this is huge. I mean, massive difference. It's almost 3 times the amount of the quest reward bag. So getting players to buy these is not going to be a difficult sell. So in order to craft one of these bags, you need to have 45 coarse leather, 25 linen, and 10 iron ingot. Now, these are extremely easy to source if you're in Windsward or Everfall. Now, First Light and Monarch's Bluffs might need to travel a little bit, but it shouldn't be too far. Yes, that is a lot of materials, but at the same time, if you're going through those farming routes and you're just acquiring, 1,500 fiber per run, if you're picking up tons of rawhide along the way, this 45 coarse leather, 25 linen, and iron ingots is not going to be difficult to put together. So go out there, craft a ton of these bags, and then sell them on the trading post for a very quick turnaround. So the other bullet we listed was related to stats. And what we're talking about here is jewelry. Now, these are things like rings, amulets, earrings. The main draw here is that players will want to accomplish 2 things. One, some people simply hate to have empty gear slots, which is why they want to hit up the trading post, get those slots filled in ASAP because they feel like they're missing out on something. I'm one of those people. I hate to have empty gear slots. If I look and notice I don't have earrings, but that earring slot is available, I'm going to go try to look and see if I can find something to fill into that slot. Number 2, some people will just naturally struggle with the difficulty of the game, and they'll want to get some extra protection early on, something like an arboreal ring that reduces nature damage taken, so on and so forth. So them heading out to the trading post and going, what can I get in order to kind of shore up my survivability? Be that solution, sell them some jewelry. Now, this one, the whole stats related one, is much less effective early on because you have to put a ton of time investment into it. First, you need to be able to mine silver, and that's where you can go out and source your gems. And if you don't have a ton of silver nodes to go out and mine, then you're not going to be able to get a ton of gems to then flip into jewelry. So yes, early on, this one is probably not the best, but if you can craft jewelry in addition to one of the other methods, that's a really good way to supplement your income. So now that we've talked about early game, let's talk about late game, and let's apply these exact same principles. Now, I'm not going to go into heavy detail for all of these because they follow the same guidelines and you can kind of put it all together. So we're going to ask those same 3 questions to identify some new items to source and sell for endgame players. What will players be using heavily in endgame or late game? What will players be focusing on in late game? And what limitations will players have that you can alleviate? So here are a few suggestions, right? For the first one, what will players be using heavily? Again, tools. They're going to want higher rarity tools, things like green, blue, purple tools. Be that person, have those tools for them. They're also going to want things like potions. They're going to be more important because they're going to be participating in different events, in different modes, all of that. They're going to want potions to increase their survivability. Lastly, we have gems for gear. Now, gems are going to be incredibly important because at this point, people are looking to fine tune or put the finishing touches on their build and their gear and armor setup. So at this point, people want to start slotting those things in. Be the person that has a ton of these. Go out, farm an inventory full of gems, go back, cut them, put them on the trading post. These will sell extremely well. Moving to number 2, what players will be focusing on in Endgame. So we've shifted our focus from leveling and probably crafting for the most part, right? People are still gonna be finishing up crafting stuff, but we're moving into different things like expeditions, which means tuning orbs. So what resources go into a tuning orb? Find that out and sell those. I'll give you a hint. I have farming routes for all of these things. They're essences and a few other materials. And the second item is house items. People are going to want to start decorating their house and taking advantage of all of the features that come with it. What resources go into crafting those type of things? Sell those items. And lastly, we have wars. Now, wars is one that's going to shift quite a bit, I think. So keep an eye on the meta, understand what players are using to gain an advantage in wars, and then how you can capitalize on it. Is it a certain type of potion? Is it a certain type of weapon? A certain type of gem? Is it a certain setup? Be able to understand what people need and be the solution for them. Number 3, what limitations will players have? 2 things. Inventory space, again, literally forever on inventory space. Just continue making as best of bags as you possibly can and then keep selling them. Because unless New World just dies out and the population just drops and grinds to a halt, there will always be new players coming into the game, new players hitting level 60, and new players needing bags to increase their inventory size. So this is a never-ending cycle. The other one is tuning orbs. They go here as well, right? Players will have limitations on tuning orbs. Because players can only craft 1 tuning orb, high-end tuning orb per day, then they're going to want to have resources they can either give to someone else for them to craft a dungeon key, and then they can run through that expedition again. Because the thing is, players want to chain run dungeons. They want to be able to maximize their chances at getting whatever piece of loot that they're chasing. And they put in time gates in order to stop people from doing that. You can't go through and just chain run a Lazarus dungeon because you can't make enough materials per day to do that. There are cooldown timers. So being able to sell the items to a group of people and say, hey, each person can now make rune stones. Each person can now have their own tuning orb and you can run it 5 times in a row. So be that person that provides those resources. So at the end of the day, I mean, tuning orbs are going to be a big place where you can make a lot of money. So all of these things can be optimized to be as efficient as possible, right? Maybe work out some supply lines with other players where you trade resources to avoid having to travel as far for them. There are always opportunities. You just have to be smart and think laterally about different things. No assumptions, think laterally about situations. Now, I hope this has helped give some insight to everybody on how to make a huge amount of gold in New World. There's a lot of market potential and a lot of opportunities to generate a huge bank account. So now that I've given away most of my secrets, I hope to see you all out there working that trading post and buying up all kinds of territories or rare gear. Now, I want to hear from you guys. If you want to, what are some interesting ways that you plan on making gold within the first week? And then let's say later on towards Endgame. I'm very curious to see what other methods there are that you guys have come up with. But thank you everyone so much for all the support. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.